I've got an buyer going to make an offer on a little business that I've got, and I want your opinion about LOIs and PSAs. Um, I know that it's slick if they just write you out a PSA and you accept it and everyone goes home. But when you have an LOI, you have to write a PSA eventually. And so just your thoughts on that, Tanya.
Well, if you are in a licensed state, you have the ability to go directly to a PSA.
Okay.
If you are not in a licensed state, you can only go as far as an LOI because otherwise you're practicing law without a license.
Oh,
Because
that's something I never thought of. Good. Good.
yeah, so LOIs are typically the first sentence in an LOI is this is non-binding, or somewhere in there it's going to say it's non-binding, and so we can get away with drafting those in non-licensed states, even though we're not attorneys. Um,
Oh, okay.
However, yeah, if you're in a licensed state though, and you have the ability to go directly to a purchase agreement, as long as you're using a form purchase agreement, some type of form, then as a real estate licensee, you're allowed to fill those out, same as if you were selling real estate, right? So, um, personally, it depends on the type of deal and the size of the deal. So for smaller Main Street stuff, I don't want to negotiate an LOI just to negotiate a PA. It's like, let's just get it done. The other thing is that you have a lot of people out there instructing courses now on how to buy a business, and they're teaching people to tie up 8 or 10 businesses with LOIs with exclusivity clauses, and then, see what they can do negotiating as far as negotiating the best deal and then drop the others. Um, I think that's a crappy way of doing business. And I think but that's what some of them are teaching. And so you just have to beware if if you're going to accept an LOI, I push back on exclusivity clauses on LOIs unless it's middle market or lower middle market company. They're always going to have that, and they need that because the reason that those exclusivity clauses came about or exist in lower middle market and middle market deals is because the buyer is going to have a quality of earnings report done. And those quality of earnings reports generally cost upwards of, $30,000 to $100,000. So if the buyer is going to spend that kind of money, and they usually take 4 to 6 weeks or longer to do those quality of earnings reports. So if a buyer is going to spend that type of money, what they want is, they don't want the seller to get a better offer and be able to usurp their position. So what they're saying is, yeah, I'll give you an LOI if you agree on the terms. I want an exclusivity clause for a period of time so I can get my quality of earnings done and all of that. And you can't, kick me to the curb and then I'm out 60 grand, right? So it makes sense in lower middle market and middle market deals. It does not make sense for, a 400,000 or $700,000 Main Street business because those people, those buyers are absolutely not getting any kind of quality of earnings done. They're going to do their typical due diligence. And most purchase agreements have a due diligence period in them. So there's no point in tying up the business under an LOI with an exclusivity clause. So a
I know
purchase
that.
agreement is, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dick.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know that attorneys representing buyers are always asking for the LOI. They don't like the PSA immediately. In other words, if I write a PSA from the form, as you mentioned, which I've done, the attorneys kind of balk at it a little bit because I'm not sure why. Maybe they're not used to it, or do you know why they might balk at that?
Well, I mean, some attorneys would prefer to write to draft a purchase agreement because it's more hours. It's
Yeah.
more billable hours.
I get that. I get that really well, but okay, yeah, yeah,
But because I mean, if there's already a purchase agreement that's handed to them,
yeah,
um, they prefer it be unsigned, obviously, right? And so what an attorney would push back on is if you have a signed purchase agreement, then there's already a binding contract. And now to
right,
change anything, the attorney's going to write an amendment, but the other party doesn't have to accept it. And then you have contention there. So, one of the ways around that, I mean, I know in our cab forms, when we are putting together a purchase agreement, there's a question in there that do you want an attorney review contingency? And so, we have the ability most of the time for smaller deals, I just say no, but we have the ability actually to have a contingency that gives the parties 10 days to have an attorney review. And in the review, the attorney will either agree or not agree with the contract. But the other way around that is just you put that purchase agreement together and from the buyer, and you send it back to the buyer, because usually it's the buyer making the offer, right? So you put the agreement together, you send it back to the buyer, say, run this by your legal counsel. And if everything looks good, sign it and get it back to me. I'll present it to the seller. And then
yeah,
once you present it to the seller, you tell the seller, run this by your legal counsel. And if you accept it, then we're in contract, right?
yeah.
So that's kind of the more prudent way of doing it, less
I like
hassle.
it. I like it, and it's clean. And I didn't even realize what you were saying there about the LOI in the licensed states. Because some people just don't even mention the PSA on a small business. And I had done the PSA before, but didn't realize that I might be out of compliance in some other state, but maybe. But in Washington, where I'm at, it's okay.
Yeah.
So good.
Washington, Oregon, California, Utah are
Yeah.
all licensed states.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Nevada, Arizona too. So I mean everything West
Yeah.
Coast.
That's makes it slick. Yeah. Okay.
But
Well,
you get up into Montana, Wyoming, Idaho. I don't think Idaho. Oh, Idaho's a licensed state, but Montana, Wyoming are not. So if you're doing business in those states, it's like, or Texas, it's like, no, you can't go past that LOI. You've got to have an
got
attorney
it.
draft it.
Got it.